this video, we're looking at almost every secret, Easter egg, piece of trivia, and so much more about this game. And we're doing it in classic Iceberg style. So the longer the video goes on, the more fascinating the info should get. Quick spoiler warning here, but let's dive straight into this massive project. Profile: Donkey Kong is probably the most famous ape in the entire video game universe. With this newest installment, the series makes an impressive comeback after a full 11 years. It's also the series' very first 3D adventure since Donkey Kong 64. But before we dive deeper into this iceberg, let's start with a quick profile of our beloved ape. Donkey Kong, usually just called DK, is a male gorilla with brown fur. Exactly which gorilla species he is isn't officially known, but he's most likely a western gorilla. His unmistakable trademark is the red and yellow tie, with the initials DK. His family includes his father Donkey Kong Jr., his grandfather Cranky Kong, and his grandmother Wrinkly Kong. Candy Kong is his girlfriend, while Diddy, Dixie, and Funky Kong are among his closest friends. His favorite food is, unsurprisingly, bananas. He made his first appearance in his modern form back in 1994 in Donkey Kong Country for the SNES. His birthday, on the other hand, isn't clearly defined. Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, released on February 13th, actually opens right on DK's birthday. According to some reports though, it's supposed to fall on July 19th. His hobbies include throwing barrels, swinging on vines, racing around in minecarts, and, most recently, unstoppably digging straight through the world. His home, by the way, is the tropical DK Isles. So now you already know a ton about the character this whole video revolves around. Now let's dive even deeper and focus mainly on DK Bananza. The key facts at a glance. Donkey Kong Bananza released on July 17, 2025, developed by Nintendo, 1UP Studio, and the rest of the development team. Here's the box art. And here's an overview of the available languages. The game belongs to the 3D platformer genre, but it also has some extra adventure elements. The game reached a Metascore of 91, and these are the ratings. Trailer: Donkey Kong Bananza was first shown publicly during the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct on February 4, 2025. Right from that moment, opinions were sharply divided. Part of the community was thrilled. After all, this was Nintendo's first 3D platformer in about 8 years. Others, on the other hand, reacted far more critically, especially to DK's new design, which I'll get into in more detail later. On top of that, many fans had expected the announcement of a new 3D Mario. So the disappointment was huge when Donkey Kong took the spotlight instead. The whole concept, where nearly the entire game world can be destroyed, didn't win everyone over either. Despite this initial skepticism, the game turned into a massive success. A key turning point was the Donkey Kong Bananza Direct in June 2025. That presentation showed off the most important gameplay mechanics. Including the surprisingly complex movement, viewers also got their first deeper look at the story and the game world's different layers. And it became clear that Donkey Kong Bananza is way more than just boring rock smashing. This direct convinced a lot of people to buy the game, even if the design was still being argued about. Which, looking back, is pretty dumb, since everyone got used to the new design sooner or later anyway. Skill tree: Donkey Kong Bananza introduces a skill tree for the first time in a Nintendo game. It's not super complex, but it gives the player a clear incentive to collect as many bananas as possible. It also adds some extra motivation to keep pushing forward in the game. Void Company. The Void Company, usually just called Void Co., is the largest mining company in the world. It's run by Void Kong, who plans to drill all the way down to the legendary Banandium vein with a giant drill. He does this because the vein supposedly has the power to grant a wish. He's supported in this by Grumpy Kong and Poppy Kong. Throughout the story, the two of them keep helping him stop Donkey Kong and Pauline. But over time, Grumpy and Poppy realize that Void is a complete egomaniac. Eventually, they turn against him. After the finale, Grumpy and Poppy end up on Ingot Isle, where they founded their own construction firm together, setting themselves the goal of renovating the whole island step by step. Shortly before the finale, when King K. Rool is freed, we get another twist. Void Kong gets absolutely wrecked by him and lands, drill and all, on Tiki Island. There, he starts building up a company all over again, but more on that later. Grumpy Kong worked at Void Co. as the project lead for manufacturing and construction. Poppy Kong, on the other hand, was in charge of gathering intel in Void Co.'s intelligence division. High fives. These little details probably aren't familiar to everyone, only those who've played Bananza a bit longer. Sure, you can give NPCs a high five with a punch, but with certain characters, this action even has visible effects. One zebra, for example, has its winter coat fly right off the moment you high five it. And underneath, surprisingly, a tracksuit is revealed. Planet Core. The Planet Core is the final layer in Donkey Kong Bananza and sits at sublayer 1600. This is where the original gold vein lies, as well as the origin of all fractones. Also, Kremlings appear exclusively in this area, but more on that later. There are also several combat sections, getaways and camps full of fractones. On top of that, the first phase of the final boss fight awaits you here, marking the start of the game's grand finale. Development of Donkey Kong Bananza actually kicked off right after Mario Odyssey, which is why it was originally planned as Mario Odyssey 2. Yoshiaki Koizumi, who worked on both Super Mario Odyssey and Donkey Kong Jungle Beat, always saw DK's massive, muscular arms as the biggest difference from Mario, like how he can just smash things apart or lift heavy objects with ease. According to producer Kenta Motokura, 2D and 3D Donkey Kong are meant to differ greatly from each other in the future. The 3D games should focus on DK's strength and his ability to smash everything. The 2D DK games, though, should basically stay classic platformers, like DKC. Nintendo is currently heading in a similar direction with Mario. Super Mario Odyssey has insane movement and tons of trick jumps. But in the 2D games, he's just plain old Mario. And that's it. Since DK Bananza was first planned as Mario Odyssey 2, the game was initially developed for the Switch 1. Only about 3 or 4 years ago was it decided to move the game to the Switch 2 because of the Switch 1's limited power. Around the game's release, Nintendo posted this image on Twitter. It showed a graphics comparison between the Switch 1 and the Switch 2. So you can clearly tell it was a good call to move the game to the Switch 2. I mean, what even is this? DK Bananza was also programmed by part of the Mario Odyssey team. By part, I mean it was mainly the younger developers who worked on Bananza. And Bowser's Fury comes from those exact same developers. There's no bigger point of criticism about Donkey Kong Bananza than DK's new design. But it's actually not even his new design. Originally, it came from Donkey Kong Arcade and was used for Cranky Kong on the game's cover. Back then, this design was drawn by Miyamoto himself. The reasoning for the new design is that Nintendo can portray emotions and feelings better with this 3D model. Even though the design caught a ton of hate, especially right before and during the release window, I have to say I never want to go back to the old design. I've just grown way too fond of the new DK. Fractones. The Fractones are the inhabitants of the underground and originate from the planet core. In total, there are officially 90 different types of Fractones. These would be the regular Fractones, the Build Tones, the Flower Tones, the Chip Tones, the Amiibo Fractones, the Architect Tones, the Fragment Tones. Though the little babies aren't Fractones, don't ask me. The Elegant Tones, the Groove Tones, the Guard Tones, the Iron Tones, the Quiz Tone, the Grow Tones, the Destroyers, the Reshape Whole Landscapes to Find My Friends Tones, the Stat Tones, the Vendor Tone, the Style Tone, the Trusty Tones, and the I'm a filthy dog who hides from you inside a bag tone. That last one even has a big Easter egg. You can actually find one of them in the background of Donkey Kong Country 3. Looks like one of them hit a little too well. Aside from the ability to destroy literally everything, nothing impressed me more than the different layers and atmospheres in this game. And I have to add that almost every layer combines at least 2 different things together. Here's an example. Sublayer 100 isn't just a lagoon. It's a lagoon with a fishing village where metal is fished up using magnets, and you can really say something like that about all 17 layers. There's a factory canyon, a lava glacier, a hotel in a jungle, a beach with giant fruit, a storm layer with brightly glowing lava, a layer full of dirt where it's all about digging your way straight down, a racetrack, and even an amusement park full of food. You get what I mean. There are so many different combinations across the layers. It's just fascinating. DK's house has already gone through a change or two over the course of the series. It all started with the house's first appearance in DKC. In DK64, he lived in that exact same house. But later, in Donkey Kong Country Returns, his house suddenly has a completely different design. In the following title, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, DK decides to stick with his house from DKCR. Now, in DK Bananza, Donkey Kong even has a total of 2 houses. Sorry, I didn't realize you were apparently rich. One of them is on DK Island, which is available in the DLC. The other is in the Nostalgia Country sub-area. To discover this secret, you have to jump up right above the start using a rock. There's even a banana inside the house. If you compare the 2 houses, the one from Bananza and the one from DKC, you'll notice a few small differences. By and large though, the house still looks pretty similar to the old design. By the way, this red TV comes from the Super Smash Bros. Ultimate Reveal trailer from 2019. That trailer revealed that King K. Rool would be playable. Speaking of K. Rool, K. Rool. The king is back. After 29 years, K. Rool makes his comeback. His last appearance before Bananza was in Super Smash Bros. Ult in DKC 3. Well, close enough. Anyway, throughout all of Bananza, it was teased again and again that he'd soon be back. because at various points in the game you can spot crocodile heads. On top of that, Cranky kept going on about a banana bandit the whole time. He was referring to K. Rool the entire time. By the way, right before his first appearance, you can spot his belly here. After K. Rool punches his way onto DK Island, he jumps into a chasm that only now becomes accessible, which leads to the final layer of this game. Aside from a few references, the Kremlings, and K. Rool's first phase, not a whole lot happens in the planet core, unfortunately. K. Rool's second phase is all about dodging his attacks on a small platform. After that, you reach New Donk City. K. Rool briefly flexes his aura and, in the process, transforms the entire city into his own world. How epic is that, seriously? The final phase is then a nod to the boxing ring finale from DK64. The last phase is also insanely difficult. Nintendo, what were you cooking here? DLC. In a Nintendo Direct that had a teaser for the Mario Galaxy movie, a port of both Mario Galaxy games, a new Yoshi game, and the 17th entry in the Fire Emblem series. A DK Bananza DLC was also announced. The Direct took place on September 12, 2025, which is just 3 months after the game's release. So it's honestly pretty clear that they deliberately cut content just to release it a bit later as DLC for another $20. That's pretty shameless. The DLC also has a whole new layer, but without any collectibles. The DLC layer is a remake of the Donkey Kong Island from DK64, and it's unlocked after the finale. This island contains tons of secrets, details and Easter eggs, plus a completely new questline involving Void Kong. After being punched away by King K. Rool, he landed on this island. After looking around a bit, he discovered a new kind of emerald ore. So he founded a new company, and now DK and Pauline collect emeralds for him. In return, we get a few small rewards. The so-called Emerald Rush swaps out all the gold, Banandium gems, and fossils across various layers for emeralds. The goal is to collect as many of them as possible to reach a higher rank. There are also various badges that help you earn more emeralds. So much for that. Now let's quickly run through the Easter eggs and secrets. I think it's pretty obvious that this here is K. Rool's galleon. But back here on the ship is the goal from a level in DKC2. Over here in Squawks' tent there's an animal crate from DKC2. There's also Funky Kong's bandana on the crate next to it, and in the mines where you ride a minecart, there's one of Expresso's shoes. These platforms keep showing up, and they are not to the banana pod pads from DK64. On the beach, Wrinkly, Glimmer, Naughty, Angward and Klepper are drawn into the sand. There are also several barrels drawn into the sand that lead you to a sub-area. In DK's house, there's the same rug as in DK64. Here hangs a picture of Candy Kong, and here hangs the image that's shown once you've beaten the game. And below it hangs the image that's displayed once you've reached 100%. There's also a hammock in this room, and under the radio a blue and white checkered cloth, just like in DK64. On the wall hangs Funky Kong's surfboard from DKC, and on the beach there's yet another surfboard. This one belongs to Funky Kong from Tropical Freeze. Timeline. The timeline of Donkey Kong Bananza is highly controversial. Still, I'll try to explain it to you. Since Pauline is a teenager in DK Bananza, while she already appeared as an adult woman in Super Mario Odyssey, it should be obvious to everyone that DK Bananza has to take place before Super Mario Odyssey in the timeline. But in the very first DK game, Donkey Kong Arcade, Pauline was actually already there too. Back then though, under the name Lady, since the Kong in that game was actually Cranky Kong in his youth, it's reasonable to assume that Lady isn't the Pauline we know from Super Mario Odyssey or DK Bananza. On top of that, young Pauline often talks about her grandmother. Could her grandmother be Lady? It's definitely a plausible guess. If that's the case, Donkey Kong Arcade would have to come first in the timeline. So Pauline's grandmother gets captured by Cranky Kong, and Jumpman comes to get her back. Sometime later in the timeline comes DK Bananza. Pauline, Lady's granddaughter, runs into the Void Company, gets sealed inside a rock, and, well, you know the rest of the story. At the end, you see New Donk City. Pauline starts out there as a street musician. After 3 months, she gets a performance at City Hall, so she heads back down into the underground to find inspiration for a new song. That's how Jump Up Superstar is born, which gets her attention and eventually gets her elected mayor. After that, the events of Super Mario Odyssey follow. Sounds plausible, right? But of course, someone has to butt in and claim that Pauline's grandma is the mayor from Odyssey, and that's why none of this makes any sense anymore. But I have an objection to that. Adult Pauline. Fairly early in DK Bananza's development, the plan was to use the adult Pauline as a companion. But she didn't fit the game's style, so during development she was changed to her younger version. That's also evidence for the timeline I mentioned earlier. On the other hand, Miyamoto confirmed in an interview that the Pauline from DK Bananza isn't the same one as in Super Mario Odyssey. From that point on, I really didn't understand anything anymore. Bosses. Donkey Kong Bananza does have a number of bosses, but especially early on they're fairly simple and anything but innovative. The very first boss of the game is just a regular enemy that shows up throughout the whole game. So strictly speaking, that wasn't even a boss fight. The first boss is actually on the Lagoon layer and is created by Grumpy Kong. This boss fight basically consists of you just beating him up non-stop. Honestly though, you shouldn't expect much more from a very first boss. But it's not just the first boss fight that follows this pattern, so do the 2nd, 4th, 5th and 7th. You may have noticed that I skipped a few bosses. That's simply because those fights include a special little gimmick. The Mad Mixer, for example, is fought in a minecart, the Inflammonite you first have to chase down as a zebra, and Volt Kong is a total wuss who keeps hiding behind his arms. Even so, these bosses aren't particularly challenging either. After that, you finally fight some genuinely fun and innovative bosses for the first time. Sinister Blusterwing is the first boss where I truly felt like I was in an epic battle. After that, the previous bosses are shamelessly recycled in a slightly harder variant. That's honestly just weak. Then there's Stompin' Clomper, he's cool. And yeah, then there's recycling, even more recycling, and oh my god. Music. After half an eternity, we finally have new DK music. Bananza does have a lot of remixes from the DKC games, but there are also a ton of completely new soundtracks. Records are collectibles that are required for 100% in DK Bananza, and they can either be dropped randomly by enemies, or you collect the 5 balloons in the Bananza rehearsals, though there you can only get the instrumentals of the Bananza songs. In every getaway, there's a gramophone where you can play the individual records. By default, the DK rap plays there. In the post-game, on the groove layer, you can repair a giant speaker at Grumpy Kong for 20,000 gold. On that speaker, you can then play all the records too. Only the audio quality there is way better than at the getaways. Fossils. On almost every layer, there are 3 types of fossils. The normal fossils, the rare fossils, and the one-of-a-kind giant fossil. But on certain layers, there are also a few very special fossil designs. On the forest layer, there are fossils with designs from DKC. There's Naughty the Beaver, Professor Chops the Checkpoint Pig, and the spider named Squitter. The 3 of them come from Donkey Kong Country and are so-called animal buddies who support DK on his journey. On the Tempest layer, there are also fossils that reference DKC. Here you'll find the fossils of Winky the Frog, Glimmer the Anglerfish, who comes from DKC too, and an Enguard Swordfish. They are animal buddies too. On the Radiance layer, there are fossils of the Banana Bird, an Armadillo, and the Sea Urchin. The Banana Bird, with the scientific name Bananus goldus fluturus, comes from DKC 3. On the Feast layer, there's the car tire from DK's house, the TV from DK's house, and the Chaos Robot boss from DKC 3. In the Planet Core, there are retro references. There's the 8-bit barrel, Lady's Lost Items, and Cranky Kong from Donkey Kong Arcade. Since I have absolutely no desire to narrate this entire iceberg myself, I'd like to ask for a big round of applause for the one and only Game Dress, who gave me his Twitch login details. Hi, my name is Game Dress, and the thing with the account details was a mistake. References. Bananza contains a number of references to older DK games and other things. There's a sign that reads Arcade 81, which is a nod to DK Arcade, released in 1981. All the country levels are references to the DKC games. The music from these sub-areas is also remixed from DKC and DK Arcade. In Bananza, the soundtrack title BGM from DK Arcade shows up multiple times, among other places in the song Breaking Through. And also while sleeping. By the way, when you create a new save file, Pauline does the dance from Mario Odyssey, Bowser's Escape. It's pretty obvious that the inspiration for a game where you can destroy everything was the Bowser Escape from the finale of Mario Odyssey. The developers apparently really liked the idea of Bowser smashing everything with claw swipes and fireballs, so much so that they built a whole game around it. Visual design. The game has recurring colors that are often used as lighting. These are usually the colors cyan, never heard of it in my life, and magenta. Not only do these 2 colors create a great contrast and give DK a shimmering outline, they were also used in DK Arcade, making this a retro reference. These colors were also chosen because they give the player a Tokyo or New York skyline vibe. The developers tried to give the player a feeling of mines, paleontology, excavation, and a dance club atmosphere while playing Bananza. All of this is a deliberately chosen visual design. Deformed fractones. Everyone knows fractones. Everyone loves fractones. But what the hell happened right here? You can actually shape fractones into more or less any form you want. This works if you pelt them with sand, dirt, mud, or other soft materials. Let's take sand for example. We pelt the fractone with sand, and we see it sticks to the fractone and turns into fractonium. Yeah, this blue stuff is actually called rock fractonium, so it's already been deformed. This works with literally every fractone. The maximum amount of deformation is a big cube. 3D map. In a game like this, it's incredibly important that the map helps with orientation and stays clear. If you dig into a mountain, for example, and then want to see where you are but can't change your perspective while looking at the map, that's actually not good game design. In a case like that, a 3-dimensional map is of course incredibly handy. Personally, the map reminded me a lot of the Divine Beast map from Breath of the Wild, and that's not meant as a negative at all, because I love the 3D Divine Beast map. Fossils and bananas are also marked on the map. You can also set your own markers, which you see when you whistle. Idle animations. An idle animation is an animation that only happens when you do absolutely nothing. In DK Bananza, there are a few different ones. For example, DK and Pauline sing together. Then there's an idle animation where Pauline tickles DK, and in another, they just look around at their surroundings. For another, head to a high place. If you stand there, DK starts to wobble. On the freezer layer, DK and Pauline are cold, and in the hot caves, they're too warm. And then there are special idle animations for each individual Bananza. Out of bounds. It's no secret that in DK Bananza you can glitch out of bounds at certain spots. That means at certain spots you can slip DK through a wall, a floor or a little object. The very first out of bounds glitch that was found is at the very top of the landfill layer, where you can eventually slip through the ceiling. For the second out of bounds clip, you throw a rock up against the wall and squeeze yourself between the rock and the wall. The third glitch is right in the starting cave, where you begin the game. For this, you just climb up this wall, and with that, you're basically already out of bounds. I think everyone's already noticed that DK completely loses it near bananas. There are also small differences in the animations when you collect the bananas. Depending on which Bananza is active, there's a different banana collecting animation. It's exactly the same when you earn a skill point in a Bananza form. Development of Bananza began right after Super Mario Odyssey. Accordingly, the whole thing was started using SMO assets. They took a Goomba, gave it the hands of this boss, and programmed it so it could destroy, rip out, and simply throw rocks. That was the starting point for Bananza. Over the course of the game, we gradually get more and more Bananzas, until we finally have all 5 transformations. There's the Kong Bananza, which makes you bigger and stronger, and thus lets you much more quickly and efficiently destroy things. The chronologically second transformation is the Zebra Bananza. With it, you can run faster and dash across crumbling floors. On top of that, you spontaneously become Zebra Jesus, and you get to listen to this absolute banger. After that, you get the Ostrich transformation. With it, DK can fly briefly and then glide. You can also launch egg bombs. Then you get the Elephant Bananza. With it, you can suck up all kinds of stuff through the trunk and later reuse it as a projectile. Last but not least, you get the Snake Bananza. With it, you can jump really high. And with the snake's gaze, you move everything around you in slow motion. Now you know all the Bananzas and the order you get them in. But if we look at the bottom left during gameplay, you'll see that the Snake and Elephant Bananzas are in the wrong spot. There's no real explanation for it, but there are 2 interesting theories. Either it was planned until shortly before the end that you'd get the Snake Bananza before the Elephant Bananza, and they simply forgot to change it, which I honestly doubt. Or the developers already had speedrunning and general world exploration in mind, because as we can see, right next to the Snake Bananza is the projectile and the Ostrich transformation. So we can more easily jump into the air with the snake and immediately fly off with the Ostrich right after. No bananas? You can actually beat DK Bananza without a single banana. If a banana's in front of you, just run past it. You can even skip the very first banana by simply digging through the wall behind it. After beating the game though, you can't get there so easily anymore, because climbing or trick jumping doesn't work. But you can shoot yourself up to the starting cave with this barrel, and then, by talking to this monkey, you can replay the game's intro. Fake credits. The fake credits always play after the first phase of the final boss. Then comes the reveal that the boss isn't over yet, and the final phase of the fight begins. The fake credits first appeared in DKC 1. There, all the developers, designers and everyone else were replaced with Kremling names. In Bananza, the fake credits make their comeback after you beat K. Rool's first phase. On top of that, this K. Rool themed logo was created specifically for these credits. In these fake credits, you can also spot some familiar names. Here in the credits, names like Kekel, Kaboing, Klomp, Kingpin and several others are mentioned. All these Kremlings are known from the earlier DK games. So, I still have no idea why exactly I'm even here. I haven't really played much DK Bananza. At most, I watched along a little bit with Firecat. But hey, I guess. I'm Pengu, and today I'll be presenting the Chronostone entry to you. Chronostone, where did we Fractones come from? Driven by curiosity and a thirst for discovery, we set out in search of our origin. After long deliberation, all the clues led into the underground. So we gathered our courage and jumped into the first shaft. The landing was rough, but not painful. A dry, hot world awaited us. Its air tasting of sand and clearly different from our home. Before long, we encountered strange creatures with long, spotted necks and thick fur. With great interest, we watched them study Banandium gems as an energy source. At a fork in the road, we left the decision to chance and arrived in an icy layer. White snow fell endlessly from the sky. Friendly zebras welcomed us and introduced us to their culture. We got to know the snow, in which tracks form and sculptures can be shaped, and we tasted special foods, above all the unforgettable chocolate banana. In a deeper, warmer layer, the environment was perfect for making chocolate. Then we reached wide grasslands with enormous nests, where the courteous ostriches gave us shelter. Their heartfelt farewell stayed with us for a long time. The paths merged again, and we gazed out over a great sea of clouds with a gigantic shaft. After that, we came to a sunny beach world full of fruit. We rested, slept for years, and continued our journey feeling refreshed. In another layer, the weather changed constantly. Giant elephants and a mighty bird watched over rain, snow, and lightning. Even deeper, the ground shifted into a mix of rock and scrap because of the eels. In the Radiance layer, we sank into deep sand and, many years later, were dug out by a snake, which led us into a large cave, to crystal formations and a glowing sea of rock. Finally, we reached a place full of fractones, which we at first believed to be our origin, but we learned that it lay even deeper. In the planet core, on the feast layer, we met a lion who told us about a delicious burger. Eventually, we found an abandoned place and believed our journey was over. But deeper still lay the true planet core. There we met fractones who resembled us but couldn't speak. After long hours of learning, we finally understood one another. Together, we decided to build a village here and invite the inhabitants of all layers. This is meant to be a new origin. Where one journey ends, the next begins. Chronostone can actually be found in the planet core, right before the fight against K. Rool. He's asleep and located in this small cave. Because he hadn't shown up in so long, the other fractones probably thought he had passed away. Teleportal. The teleportal is a fairly widespread species in DK Bananza. It's a mostly blue eel that eats its way through all sorts of layers and worlds. Once it reaches a certain size, it's able to operate warp gongs. These gongs serve as a fast travel option between the different layers. If you want to teleport within a single layer, younger teleportals appear. Their mother doesn't want them leaving the layer on their own, so they only stay there. In the story section before and during the groove layer, the father of all teleportals is possessed by an evil mask from Voidco. Once you destroy this mask and free Pauline from her stone form for the second time, he comes back to his senses. At the end of the postgame, you find yourself inside the windpipe of this eel. His wife, the mother of all teleporters, is at the warp gong and takes Pauline and DK to all the different layers. Some of you have probably already wondered how it's even possible to destroy so many things. It's all based on advanced voxel technology. Here, let me quickly explain. This here is a pixel. The three-dimensional version of it is a tiny cube. And the world of Bananza is made up of countless, probably even billions, of such cubes. Anyway, such a cube is called a voxel. As soon as decay hits any object, the voxels that get struck are simply deleted. Thanks to various particle effects and these leftover pieces, the player doesn't even notice that the smashed part of the terrain was just deleted. Invisible decay. Invisible decay. How is that supposed to work? Glad you asked. I'd be delighted to waste my precious time answering your very meaningful and thrilling question. But wouldn't you rather just go home and keep building your little Timmy level? Because I would have answered this question anyway, since it's right here in my script. There are a total of 2 different ways to make decay invisible. Excuse me? Haha, no, without a glitch, of course. Version 1. After completing the main story, you can renovate the entire Ingot Isle, and thus Babu Town, at Grumpy's for 120,000 gold. Once that's done, you can talk to Poppy Kong, who then gives you a prototype of her latest invention. The invisibility tie, with it, DK becomes completely invisible, at least for the player. NPCs and enemies can still detect him though. You can pull off some pretty funny stuff with this tie, but there's also a second variant. Version 2. In the final fight against King K. Rool, you can also become invisible, but only indirectly and only for a few seconds. When you land the final hit on K. Rool as DK, this animation plays, But if you manage to beat him with one of these balls or some other projectile, a slightly different animation plays. DK is just faded out, which is why he's invisible, but otherwise nothing really changes. Speedrunning. As with almost every Nintendo game, the speedrunning community in DK Bananza is huge. Precisely because of the versatile and complex movement, this game is very popular for speedrunning. The current any % record, as of December 2024, is 1 hour, 4 minutes and 9 seconds. And it's been held for a while now by the American runner Vidox. The slowest speedrun ever submitted to speedrun.com, by the way, is 5 hours, 5 minutes and 47 seconds. The any % run I mentioned earlier is one of 4 speedrun categories. The other 3 are all Bananzas and bosses, true ending and 100%. There's also an unrestricted and a restricted category for any %. The difference is that in the restricted version, the IFAT glitch is banned because it's too overpowered. With the IFAT, you can basically fly through the air forever. There's also a single player and a 2-player version. The most important techniques in an any % speedrun are turf surfing for faster movement, roll punches for faster hitting and digging, plus FADs and other jumps for shortening or even completely skipping certain sections. Clips through walls are also performed and, like on the landfill or feast layer, even through an entire layer. In nearly every video game, there are antagonists, whether it's Calamity Ganon in Breath of the Wild or the various bosses in Elden Ring. The entire Donkey Kong series also has various antagonists. The most famous are probably the Kremlings. They appear in DKC 1, 2 and 3, as well as in DK64. In DKCR, it's the Trickiest, and in Tropical Freeze, the Snowmads. In DK Bananza, the enemies don't have one single name you can group them under, so I'll just call them the Oids. That's because every name of the species ends in Oid. In the loosest sense, by the way, that's a nod to the Kremlings, because their names almost always start with a K. The Oids are always a gilded skeleton inside some armor. The armor is usually a boulder. There are 17 types in total, some of which were replaced with Kremlings in the planet core. That includes all the enemies shown here on screen. Hi, my name is Octoblade, and I now have the honor of presenting the 3 points scattered across the iceberg. Fur color. Did you know that Donkey Kong's fur changes color when the Bananza gauge is full? This is the game's way of showing that the Bananza ability is ready to use. Because the fur then gets brighter, but also more saturated, this applies to every other fur color you can customize yourself to, except for white. That just turns gray. MKW. You might be wondering now why Mario Kart World is in this iceberg, but the reason for it is really simple. The voice actors for Void Kong, meaning King K. Rool, are listed in the credits of Mario Kart World. This strongly hints at an update or DLC, meaning there's a new game where the Crocs will be playable characters. Loading screens. The loading screens in DK Bananza are surprisingly short. When I played the game for the very first time, I even thought the loading screens were too short. There are always tips in the bottom left, but you never really have enough time to read them. Something special about Bananza's loading screens is that new artworks keep getting added over the course of the game, shown in the bottom right. There are 22 in total, which cycle through randomly. Here are all the loading screen artworks in fast forward. By the way, the teleporter swims. When you go up a layer, the teleporter swims up too. When you go down, it swims down. 100%. To achieve true 100% in DK Bananza, a few things need to be done. Let's start at the beginning. The main story has to be completed. This happens when we get all the Bananzas and beat King K. Rool in New Donk City. Then all 777 bananas across the various layers have to be collected. The Bananza rehearsals also have to be completed. All fossils also have to be collected and applied to outfits in the shop. All outfits also have to be upgraded to the max. At the chip exchange, you then have to buy a full 223 bananas. Collecting the records also counts toward 100%. Now you just have to empty out the skill tree and improve everything as much as possible. Build all the getaways and all the barrels, or remove the rocks from the sub-areas. As you can see, there's quite a bit to do if you want to 100% this game. Bananza skip. The game intends for you to collect all the Bananza abilities, but despite that, it's possible to reach 2 Bananza rehearsals anyway. First, the zebra one. When you finish the forest layer and are only supposed to do the freezer layer to get the other half of the bridge, you can just make a slightly tighter jump with the ostrich Bananza and hop over to the end platform. After that, on the radiance layer, you can also skip the snake Bananza by grabbing the key you'd normally need it for with another somewhat tricky jump and progressing without it. At the end, the game actually notices that you don't have everything and then gives the player a special text box. Peoples. On the various layers, there are several peoples and civilizations you meet over the course of the adventure. Most of them are simply animals that exist in real life. These include zebras, ostriches, monkeys, elephants, and snakes. There are also 2 more animal species that somehow went extinct. I'll tell you more about them in detail later. Then there are peoples like the fractones or the teleportals. They don't clearly represent any specific real-world animal. Certain peoples have an elder. They are basically a chief or mayor, so they more or less decide what happens in the village. On top of that, each of these elders is a DJ and accordingly owns an old record. With this record, they have the ability to teach DK and Pauline the Bananzas. Every single one of these Bananzas has a unique ability, which DK masters in the post-game in the so-called Bananza rehearsals. When he's in one of these rehearsals but leaves it, tons of residents stand in a semicircle around this podium with the microphone and cheer like crazy. Losing gold. Basically, every player has gotten a game over in DK Bananza sooner or later and thereby realized that you always lose a certain amount of gold. By default, DK always loses 500 gold. With a bit less gold, exactly 10% of your current amount is deducted, rounded to the first 2 decimal places. That's why you lose a lot of gold at the start and less over time, because those 10% eventually get smaller and smaller too. If you repeat this until you have 0.09 gold, no gold is deducted anymore, because it would fall below the rounded range. So the lowest possible gold total is 0.09 gold. Diddy and Dixie. Just like DK and Cranky Kong, Diddy Kong and Dixie Kong also make their comeback. Their last appearance before this was in the Donkey Kong Country Returns remake for the Nintendo Switch, which released in 2025. Before that, they appeared in the Switch remake of Tropical Freeze, which came out in 2018 and is therefore already 8 years old. But now let's talk about the Kong siblings' appearance in the newest entry of the DK series. Over the course of the story, you meet Diddy and Dixie on the racing layer. To reach the deeper layers, DK and Pauline have to beat Diddy and Dixie in the Rumby Rumble. This race, the Rumby Rumble, is an obvious reference to the video game Diddy Kong Racing, released for the N64 in 1997. There's also a level in DKC2 called Rumby Rumble. By the way, there are 2 relevant shortcuts in the second harder Rumby Rumble. I mean, you can just fly through here and save a whole turn. This part is also a great shortcut, and inside the giant trophy there's a star barrel from DKC2. But if you talk to Diddy and Dixie now, some of you should notice a few references. In the dialogue, Dixie mentions Candy Kong, DK's girlfriend. Diddy also says that he and DK are best friends and have already been through a few adventures together. This obviously refers to DKC1, DKCR, and Tropical Freeze. Dixie then says that she's been through a few adventures herself too. This refers to DKC2, DKC3, and, once again, Tropical Freeze. Then Dixie adds that she and Diddy rescued DK. This is clearly a reference to DKC2. When you give Diddy a high five, he adjusts his Nintendo cap, but when you give Dixie a high five, she does her iconic hairspin into the air. Dixie and Diddy also have the same idle animations as in the original DKC. Treasure map. This treasure map was already mentioned earlier, but now I'll go into more detail about it. When you find such a map in a treasure chest or buy it in the shop, it marks a banana or a fossil. But this map has one more little secret. Let's zoom in a bit closer for this. You see that? On the paper as part of the map from DKC3, this is the Northern Cremisphere. Statues. If you own the DLC, you can buy a statue from Squawks for 100 Banandium chips. These are then brought to the island by Squawks. You're wondering what you can do with them? Well, how should I put it? Nothing at all. You can do absolutely nothing with them. Sure, you can look at them, and if you have no life, you can buy every single statue and decorate the whole island with them. But nothing more than that. On top of that, in the Emerald Rush game mode, there's a new statue to win every month. At the time I'm writing this into the script, there's already Chunky and Lanky Kong, both from DK64, as well as Lord Frederick and a penguin from DKCTF. There are also already certain characters from DK Jungle Beat, but new figures are supposed to be added monthly, which you can earn in events. Small update. In the long-awaited Nintendo Direct, new content for Emerald Rush was announced. It's a collaboration with the 40th birthday of Super Mario. Every now and then, question mark blocks appear, and both DK and Pauline wear Mario and Luigi costumes. For this, seriously, for this, the next 3D Mario died. Demo? You could test the game as a demo at the Nintendo Switch 2 Experience from April 4th to May 11th. You could do this in Paris, London, Berlin, Milan, Amsterdam, and Madrid. At the Switch 2 Experience, you could also try out Mario Kart World, the new versions and features of Bot W and Todd K, and obviously the console itself. You could also try the new Joy-Cons. You could hold the Joy-Cons and the Pro Controller in your own hands and form your own opinion about them. Enough about that. Let's move on now to the Bananza demo. It lasted about 30 minutes. You could try out DK's abilities and movement and test them more or less thoroughly, and you could even play a relatively short section of the game yourself. You started on Ingot Isle in the game's intro. Even so, you already had the Kong Bananza and Pauline had already replaced the stone. The demo could be ended by either playing for 30 minutes or reaching sub-layer 101. 3. DK Artist. With the release of Donkey Kong Bananza, a lot of artistic talent emerged too. This is thanks to DK Artist, a mode where you can sculpt, color, and simply let your creativity run free. In DK Artist mode, you can pick an object from various templates. Whether it's the head of DK, Void, Diddy, Dixie, or whoever, or simply an apple or a banana. You can then paint this 3D model with various materials from the main game. There's wood, for example, snow, lava, or even banandium. You can also expand and shrink this 3D model. The whole thing is played with a Joy-Con and one Joy-Con in mouse mode. Overall, it's a nice little mode on the side, but honestly nothing to write home about. 4. Outfits. In DK Bananza, just like in Super Mario Odyssey, there are outfits you can buy over the course of the game. The difference though is that outfits in Bananza give the player advantages, while the outfits in Odyssey were purely cosmetic. For example, there's a tie that makes you find chests more often. At certain fractones you can buy pants, ties, fur colors and outfits for Pauline using the fossils collected in the current layer. These outfits can also often be upgraded, which improves the effect. The upgrades can also be paid for with fossils. Here, everything except the fur color gives all kinds of different effects. For example, these pants make you move faster through mud and fresh snow. This tie, which you get from Poppy Kong in the post-game, simply makes you invisible. And this tie, which you get after completing the incredibly difficult DLC puzzle, randomizes your entire outfit after every loading screen. Of course, there are also some Easter eggs and secrets in the outfits. This fur, for example, is a reference to the design of the Crazy Cap shop from Super Mario Odyssey. These pants are a huge reference to DK Arcade. And this outfit for Pauline represents Lady from that exact game. The last outfit Easter egg is this dress for Pauline, which represents the mayor outfit from Super Mario Odyssey. Gold. Gold is the most important currency in Bananza. Not only do you need it to buy things like apple juice or treasure maps in the shop, but throughout the game there are also repeatedly spots where a certain amount of gold is required to progress. By far the best method to get as much gold as possible in a short time is to go to this checkpoint on Ingot Isle, shoot yourself up with a cannon barrel and then suck away this giant golden DK statue with the elephant Bananza. Once that's done, you can just reset the terrain and repeat the whole thing. The only downside is that, in order for the statue to even be there, you have to renovate the entire island. And that costs a whopping 120,000 gold. One option to get this amount of gold is to create the Planet Core camp right at the start in this area by clapping these gold pillars, and then immediately mining it again right after. You do that until you have enough gold. If you need banandium chips, this sub-area on the canyon layer is the right place to go. Just play through this sub-area and reload as soon as you're in front of this banana. That way you get a lot of these chips very quickly. If you also own the DLC, you can talk to Squawks after this sub-area on Ingot Isle and DK Island. With him, you can then either buy a statue for 100 banandium chips or he gets you some gold. Squawks always brings you 10,000 to 20,000 gold for 100 chips. New Donk City. You're on a crumbling banana platform in the fight against King K. Rool. With the All Mine remote, he gradually destroys the platform you're standing on. You rip out a piece of the platform and throw it at K. Rool, and suddenly you find yourself on the surface in New Donk City. The events of Super Mario Odyssey once took place here, and now you just find yourself in the biggest city in the entire franchise. But what immediately catches your eye is that the city residents wear completely normal clothes. Not like in Mario Odyssey, where they were all dressed up sharp in suits. Shortly after, K. Rool stands atop City Hall and destroys the entire city with his banana goo. So you fight your way through several sections where nearly all the Bananza abilities come into play once more, right up to King K. Rool, to then fight him in a final showdown in the boxing ring above City Hall. Merchandise. Nintendo isn't exactly unknown for fan articles and merchandise. That's exactly why it was to be expected that some Bananza merchandise would appear over time. This assumption came true pretty early, because this amiibo came out right on the release date. Today you can get it for almost 30 euros at Nintendo. But if you look around a bit, you can also get this amiibo much cheaper. Later, around the opening of the Nintendo pop-up store, this amiibo comes out. There's even more merchandise for this gorilla out there. Among other things, keychains, socks and even glasses. On the Nintendo Store mobile app, by the way, there are even more products you can get by redeeming platinum points. wallpapers and videos. To promote Donkey Kong Bananza, several wallpapers and promo videos were released even before launch. On one hand, these are wallpapers that work perfectly as a phone or desktop background. But these images could also make a good poster. As for the videos mentioned earlier, they are 3D animated short-form videos that Nintendo posted basically everywhere before release. Materials: some break very quickly, others take a bit more, and still others can only be destroyed with the Kong Bananza. But there are really only two truly indestructible materials in this game. One is of course this material that borders the play area on every layer. And the other is actually rubber. Don't ask me why. Obviously, besides an indestructible material, there's also one that's the easiest to destroy. And it's not dirt, fabric or anything like that. It's mud or grass. Even though DK can destroy all these materials with a single hit, strictly speaking, to destroy this material, you don't have to hit anything at all. If you jump into a water bubble like this, or simply stand under a waterfall, you destroy water. So water is the material that's the easiest to destroy. At a stat tone, you can also check how much you've already destroyed of the various materials. The maximum in the table is 100,000 cubic meters each. DLC puzzle. In the DLC of Donkey Kong Bananza, which is generally already crap, there's something that really tops it all off. This damn banana with the name Banandium Tone. This banana is up on this little island and has mentally destroyed a lot of players, myself included. Basically, at this banana you have to solve 8 puzzles, all with their own rules. In the first puzzle, a symbol floats above the banana's head, which changes when you hit it. If you repeat this until the symbol turns yellow, the first puzzle is solved. In the second puzzle, 2 adjustable symbols are available. Since Donkey Kong can punch with both his right and his left arm, you can exploit this mechanic for the puzzle. The left symbol changes when you punch with the left and the right one when you punch with the right hand. The directions of the punches alternate. In puzzle 3, you switch the position of the now 3 symbols by hitting the ground with R. As always, when you hit the banana, the symbol changes until it's yellow. In the fourth puzzle, there are now, as intended, 4 symbols. To select the position on the ground, you just have to stand in a certain direction. In puzzle number 5, it depends on which slot you're on in the Bananza display. So with Donkey Bananza it's the first symbol, with Zebra the second, and so on. Each Bananza changes 3 different symbols, which is honestly a nightmare. Here's a table for you, maybe that makes it a little easier. Trust me, it doesn't get easier. When you hit the banana in puzzle 6, all the symbols change. To lock a slot in place, you have to complete the correct bonus stage. There's also a map for this online. To solve the 7th puzzle, the banana has to be hit 7 times with different attacks in a fixed order. Since each hit creates a symbol that travels from right to left, only the correct arrangement brings all the symbols to completion. The 8th puzzle is, ironically, the easiest. You just have to go to this bongo island and swim around over there in the shape of a figure 8. And the reward for all of this is something ultra amazing, right? Not quite. You get an outfit that gives Pauline and DK a random outfit, which changes when you reload the game. That's it from me. Go like this insane project by Firecat and have fun. That's it for the video. In between facts. During the production of this iceberg, I kept noticing smaller things that wouldn't be worth a full entry. So let's head over here for a moment and place an ice cube right here. As you can see, a few different points are already listed on it. I'll say a little something about each point and then we'll get right back to the iceberg. Lava. Basically, every player has seen lava at some point. It appears for the first time on the freezer layer, although it's not actually lava here. Not magma either. It's actually chocolate sauce. Please don't ask how I know that. Singing. By pressing L, Pauline starts to sing. This makes music notes appear that point the player the way. If you've set a marker on the map, or there are still undiscovered treasures marked, they'll also be shown when you sing. You can also dissolve this purple stuff by singing. With a well-timed beat of the singing, you can practically one-shot these generators. Pauline's English voice actress, Jenny Kidd, by the way, sang all 5 Bananza songs as well as the song Breaking Through. Bounce. On the forest layer, there's this trampoline section where you bounce around. This entire section is a reference to the jelly jungle from Tropical Freeze. Naked. In the English version, the closet says naked when you don't select anything. But in German it says Natur. Camera psychosis. With the camera tool, you can take some pretty strange and crazy photos. Why can you even create fractones in the eyes in camera mode? Anyway, these here are some of the most disturbing pictures I found. Sun effect. On the canyon layer, this sun effect, yes, this exact one, is made of bananas. That's because the sun is a bunch of bananas, but we'll get to that later. Right stick. As I think everyone knows, the two sticks you use to control DK and the camera are also buttons. By pressing in the right stick, you switch to the next Bananza by default. You can also change the function of this button in the settings. Clapping. In the game's intro, or rather the tutorial, you're told that DK has the ability to clap. This lets you not only create pillars like this at certain spots, but also pull gold and similar things toward you like a magnet. Collectibles like bananas, fossils, and chests also briefly become visible through the sonar when you clap. When DK is climbing a wall, he can still clap, he just holds on with his feet. When he's hanging, he claps with his feet. Alright, that's it again for the in-between facts. Let's move right on to the next point. Sleeping. On every layer, there are so-called architect tones. If you talk to them and bring a bit of gold, they can build a getaway for you. By the way, a getaway also counts as a teleport point. In a getaway like this, there's a record player, a butler, and a bed. When you sleep in a bed like this, all your hearts fill back up, and Pauline tells you something. She either shares her opinion on something, says something about the residents of the layer, or the layer itself. Or she talks about her life on the surface. Every now and then, she also talks about her grandmother. The more beds, or rather getaways, you have on a layer, the more extra hearts you get when you sleep. By the way, this sound plays when you sleep. This is a reference to DK Arcade, because there the soundtrack title BGM begins in exactly the same way. Artwork. If you search DK Bananza Gallery in your browser, you'll end up on a certain page of the Mario Wiki. There you'll find all the logos, artworks, screenshots, box arts, amiibo, and various other things. Logos. Here you will find all existing logos in various languages. You'll also find the Direct's logo here, all the DLC logos also in various languages, and finally the K-Rool based logo from the fake credits. Artworks. These are 3D renders of all kinds of characters and objects. Here's a rundown of all the DK renders. DK punching, DK holding a large rock, DK on a minecart, DK holding a Banandium gem, DK holding emerald ore, Kong Bananza, Zebra Bananza, Ostrich Bananza, Elephant Bananza, DK and Pauline, DK punching with Pauline on his back, DK holding a large rock with Pauline, DK and Pauline, minecart, DK and Pauline punching downward, DK running with Pauline, Kong Bananza and Pauline. Screenshots, they're just screenshots, right? What can I say? Box arts, here you can see the front and back of the game case in various languages. Amiibo, here you can see the amiibo itself in the amiibo's box. More, here various creative tweets and other posts are listed. But I already talked about that earlier. Subscribe. I think you know what to do. Subscribe to the channel. Oh banana. Oh banana. You can hear this sound up to 1,000 times total in this game. Every time a Banandium gem is collected, DK says these words, smashes the banana, and then it floats away afterward. But the words "Oh banana" already made an appearance in the Donkey Kong series earlier, namely in DK64. The sound plays in DK64 when you collect a totally normal banana. But how did the sound actually come about? The famous soundtrack composer Grant Kirkhope, who among other things composed music for Banjo-Kazooie and also DK64, was spontaneously looking for someone who could voice the "Oh banana" sound effect. But so many of the co-workers he asked declined that he briefly decided to record the sound himself. At least that's what he says in an interview. Bananza. What exactly do we even mean by Bananza? Over time, DK learns a total of 5 different transformations with different abilities. There's the big, strong ape, jacked as hell, the quick and elegant zebra, the ostrich that flies and crabs out egg bombs, the elephant which can suck up all kinds of stuff and later reuse it as projectiles, and last but not least a snake that can slow down time for high jumps. So through Pauline singing, DK can transform into the different Bananza forms. Without Pauline singing, it doesn't work. You can see that in the finale too. The word Bananza was most likely derived from the English word banana. At the very least, one letter, namely the Z, was simply added. By the way, this is Ruby's favorite Bananza, the zebra. Design-wise, also the zebra. The zebra is ultra sick. I'm so sad that the zebra gets used so rarely. Details. Nintendo is very well known for often building little details and Easter eggs into their games. Of course, DK Bananza has details like this too. For example, if we travel to the freezer layer and take a closer look at the snow, we see that the individual snowflakes are shaped like a zebra hoof. For the next detail, we'll stay right here on the freezer layer and dig down to the indestructible floor. There we see that horseshoes are depicted on it. On the Radiance layer, there actually are snakes. That's exactly why, at certain spots on the layer, you can spot a stone mosaic shaped like snake scales. On the forest layer, you can see ostrich footprints in the hotel. There are also flowers, grasses, and other decorative elements throughout the entire game that look like bananas and banana peels. Race skip. The race against Diddy and Dixie can be skipped pretty easily. For this, just grab this floating ore and fly over to the track. You can actually run around before the race too. Here, at this spot, grab the floating ore again and fly over to the big golden trophy. That's how you can just skip the race. But Pauline is a bit disappointed and asks if we couldn't at least try the race once. Sub-areas. On almost every single layer in the main game, there are 2 types of sub-areas. These triangular sub-areas always contain a special challenge and 3 bananas. The last banana is always hidden somewhere throughout the whole area. The circular sub-areas are combat rooms, where you have to defeat a certain number of enemies within a time limit. As a reward, the element always gives a single banana. By the way, all the sub-areas come from the groove layer, while the fractones and all the gold come from the planet core. In the post-game, on Ingot Isle, you can start construction projects at Grumpy Kong, so there you can unlock 2 big challenge barriers. In one of them, you just fight through several enemy rooms against a time limit. While in the other, you fight a boss rush against tougher versions of the already known bosses. Kremlings, this one here, him, this one here, and that one over there. Even King K. Rool, they're all Kremlings. By Kremlings, we mean these crocodile-like enemies from the Donkey Kong series, although I take back the crocodile part, because all these enemies count as Kremlings too. For their first appearance, the Kremlings, just like the modern DK and King K. Rool, debuted in DKC1. In Bananza, you find out that, just like K. Rool, they've been buried underground for many years. Huh? K. Rool has woken up again, and yet here are these crocodile... Wait, oh my god. In this game, some of the most iconic and famous Kremlings return after many years. These include Army, Critter, Kaboom, Claptrap, Necky, and the Zingers. Luigi's Mansion font. In this DK Bananza trailer, this date is shown at the end. Totally normal, right? Apparently not for everyone. Some people noticed that this font is surprisingly similar to the font from Luigi's Mansion 3. Accordingly, some thought it was a teaser and that Luigi would appear in the game. As we know today, this is complete nonsense. But why exactly such a similar font was used still hasn't been clarified. The most likely theory is that the developers simply thought the font fit the setting well. Dreamworld. In an interview, it was officially confirmed that the places where Donkey Kong learns the Bananza abilities only take place in DK's head, meaning in his dreams. You notice this while playing, because after learning a Bananza, DK always falls asleep, and Pauline has to wake him up. Why the developers decided to do this is currently still unclear. By the way, I wonder what DK's fever dreams look like, if these here are the normal ones. Light sources. Let's be honest. Without real lighting, like the sun for example, the gameplay would be a bit different. See what I mean? But since we're underground, sunlight actually doesn't make any sense. The most obvious example is probably the gigantic light bulb used as an artificial sun on the Radiance layer. In fact, DK even activates it over the course of the story. On Ingot Isle, the lighting is moonlight. But there are also a few rather unusual light sources in this game. On the lagoon layer, for example, you see that the entire layer is underwater and the sun simply shines through these thin layers of water. On the canyon layer, the sun is simply a bunch of bananas. The sun on the resort layer looks like a piece of fruit cut in half. But it could also be a banana chip. The light source of the forbidden layer is the inside of this giant thing. This thing is considered the gate to the Banandium core. Taxi. In New Donk City, where the final showdown takes place, there are taxis, just like in Mario Odyssey. The only real difference is that the number on the license plate on the back is a different one. In Super Mario Odyssey, this plate reads 1981. That was the year the very first DK game, Donkey Kong Arcade, was released. In Bananza, the taxi's license plate reads 2025. That's the release year of Donkey Kong Bananza, the newest entry in the series. Either this is just a little nod to the taxis from Super Mario Odyssey, or it was just confirmed that DK Bananza is a sequel and thus comes after Mario Odyssey in the timeline. Banana remote. This remote, which looks like a peeled banana, appears fairly often over the course of the game. At first, it's in Void Kong's possession, but after he's defeated on the Forbidden Layer, it now belongs to King K. Rool. But after he too is brought to justice, you can find the so-called All Mine remote broken on Ingot Isle. But what exactly is so special about this remote that every antagonist in the game uses it? For one, it can shoot lasers. It can also trap creatures inside these purple rocks and create terror voids and enemies. K. Rool, however, actually only uses it to destroy this platform. Banana font. You've definitely seen these banana characters all over DK Bananza, whether on stone tablets, in archways like these, or simply on these maps. But first, credit goes to True Crispy, from whom I borrowed the info for this point. In-game, in English, the term chip exchange is shown. As we all know, at these shops you can exchange chips for bananas. That's exactly what chip exchange means. Above these shops there are also signs like these with this banana script. So let's take a closer look at it. The word exchange has exactly the same number of letters as this text. We can also see that the first and last symbol have the same design. So this here is an E. The symbols were then compared with the other texts, and with that, the banana alphabet was almost completely deciphered. On these stone tablets, for example, it says message. Thank you for reading. Someone. Animals. A very creepy myth says that there were once even more animals. But today, every trace of them is gone. They are said to have lived on both the canyon layer and the feast layer. Through inscriptions and fractones, we learn that giraffes and lions once lived here. Today, the fractones imitate them and are thus almost the last living proof of them. In the amusement park on the feast layer, there's a giant Ferris wheel with the face of a lion. Did they once live there? And the giant banana burger? Where does the meat come from? Could the fractones possibly be responsible for it? Or the Kremlings? So many questions, and we'll probably never get an answer to them. Secret monkey. Inside a cave, there's a mining monkey. He says it's his favorite spot and that DK will make it big one day. After the finale, you can tell him that you met him in the planet core, which triggers a special text box. What does the future of Donkey Kong look like? A lot of people ask themselves this question. And honestly, it's only natural. We heard nothing from the Donkey Kong series for ages, and suddenly the second 3D DK ever is announced. And the Kremlings who had vanished off the face of the earth for 26 years are back too. Will we from now on only play the strong ape who can smash everything? The answer is no. The Donkey Kong Country games are way too successful to give up. There will definitely be more 2D DKs, and probably with Kremlings and K. Rool again too. But what about 3D DKs now? Will Bananza be the last 3D game in the series for now? Here too, I think the answer is pretty clearly no. Donkey Kong Bananza was a huge success, and it wouldn't be a smart decision to abandon the series right after such a success, but I also think that Nintendo will handle it similarly to the 3D Marios. Instead of developing a Donkey Kong Bananza 2, they'll simply develop a completely new game with a new main gimmick. While in Bananza, the promotion was all about making it clear to the player that he can destroy everything. The next 3D DK could feature a completely different creative interpretation of DK. Right now, we really don't have any indication yet of how the DK series could continue. But we do know the series isn't over for now. And with that, we've reached the end of this journey. After more than 80 points, a year of work, and 11,000 words in the script, I'm now finished with this massive project. I sincerely thank you for watching this video. I also sincerely thank each and every person who helped create this iceberg. In the video description, nearly all the sources are listed once again, and there you can also find the channels of the people who supported me on this journey. By the way, I beat my working hours record for my last iceberg by almost 100 hours.